just confirm that. It says video is starting. Let's see what's going on in the Facebook group. Yeah, getting Zoom to talk to Facebook is it's working. Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, excellent. So let's go back to Zoom. And okay, so let's get started again. Let me just text one of my colleagues who had dropped off. And I don't blame her because we're behind schedule. Okay, all right, welcome everyone. So in Zoom land and in Facebook land, this is Seth Itzkan from Soil4Climate. Today is January 1st, 2026, and I'm hosting a Reflections and Hopes webinar where we talk about our reflections from the last year and hopes for this coming year. I know this type of thing is typically done on the last days of the prior year. So most people do this type of thing on, the last week of 2025. But I just didn't get around to it, so we're doing it today. And it seems like January 1st is sort of a good day to do that kind of thing anyway. So, so if you're watching and you want to come on, then please do just join the webinar, and then if you have anything that you want to add, I'll elevate you to be a panelist, and that goes for the people who are already on board. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about my reflections and hopes from 2025 and 2026, and then sort of open up the floor. One second. Let me just double check again and make sure that we are streaming into Facebook okay. And it does look like we are. Let me put the URL for this into the Facebook stream so people can get on. Okay, I've done that. So then, without any further ado, let me talk about. Oh, Hunter, thanks for coming back. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about my reflections from 2025 and hopes for 2026, and then we'll open up the floor and we'll elevate you to be a panelist. So let me start by doing a share of some PowerPoints, of a PowerPoint that I've prepared for this purpose. And so then just give me a second here. So much jumping around. Oh, good God. I need an engineer who wants to be the Soil4Climate engineer. So, make this kind of thing easier. Okay, so let's put this into presentation mode here, and then we will be all set. And then, bang. Okay, so now that's in presentation mode. So let's even go to the slide before that. Reflections and hopes, 2025, 2026. Well, here we are. It's already 2026. Time sure is flying, isn't it? And, what I want to talk about are these two conferences that I went to toward the end of 2025, both on livestock, both in Rome. And And I would say these were sort of turning points for me in terms of understanding the international narrative around livestock and climate and development and all the rest. And we're all sort of eye openers, if you will. And the first was the Food and Agriculture Organization, or the FAO, 2025 Global Conference on Sustainable Livestock Transformation. That was toward the end of September into the beginning of October. And then the next one, which immediately followed, which was also in Rome, just sort of on the outskirts, was the International Livestock Research Institute Sustainable Beef Investment Roundtable. And this was an invitational conference. And the first one was sort of open to anyone who is a delegate within sort of the UN framework. And that includes the vast majority of people who are, from NGOs like Soil4Climate. So the way these things work is there's a certain percentage of people who are there as sort of delegates of their country, but the vast majority of people, are frankly folks like me, kind of everyday people representing some nonprofit organization or some other agency that wants to network or have a voice. And I was really very inspired by both of these conferences. And I did have a chance to speak at both of them. At the FAO conference, it was sort of more informal. At the invitational conference, the ILRI conference, I was invited to speak on the opening panel, which was quite an honor and privilege. So let's move on. So the FAO Conference on Sustainable Livestock Transformation. Let's just move right on to that. What would I need to click to advance the slide? I guess I need to click. And then this was the second conference that I went to immediately afterwards. So let's just talk first about the first one. If you're in Rome, it really is a pretty remarkable place. And so for me personally, just sort of being in Rome was quite an inspiration. And I would recommend that if people go, you do the Airbnb thing. It's definitely the most affordable way to go. I was literally right across the street from the Colosseum, not figuratively, literally. I was in a B&B right across the street from the Colosseum. It was last minute arrangement, very affordable, about a third of the cost of the hotels in town. I don't understand the economics of hotels and B&Bs, but it seems like the B&Bs are clearly have the better deal. So this is a picture from outside my window, and then the Coliseum is right around the corner there, and then this is walking distance from the FAO headquarters. Literally just walked. It was like a 10-minute walk, and the FAO is a pretty impressive place. I don't know how many people here have been to the FAO headquarters before, but it's pretty impressive. This was my third time there. I was there in 2017 for a soils conference where I met Dr. Lan and some others. Was representing Soil4Climate at the time. I had a poster session. Second time I was there in 2021. Yeah, the summer of 2021 for the UN Food Systems Summit. It was sort of the pre-conference. And then this time for the FAO Sustainable Livestock Conference. And I think it's great. I think it's great that there's an FAO, and you should definitely find an excuse to go there at some point. So this is after the registration. They called it Livestock Week. Now we're inside. Sustainable Livestock Transformation conference, and this is the main atrium. It's pretty impressive. Again, pretty impressive presence. And both the other two times that I was there, I just like went right to the conference room where we were having our session. I think the first time I had a poster session in the atrium, and I just sort of stuck around there and left. But this time I was there longer, and I really took in the full gestalt of the FAO. I went to offices on different floors. I went to multiple cafeterias, including they have a rooftop cafeteria with amazing views of Rome that I didn't even know about. It's just pretty incredible. And I really sort of took in the whole thing. Plus, the security was heightened, so you're online for a long time. And I visited some of the other offices, including the soils office. And I really had a much greater appreciation for it. And so here we are in the main hall. So this is the opening plenary for the Sustainable Livestock Transformation Conference. And obviously, this pretty prestigious big room, several hundred people there, I guess. And, I'm just sitting in the back trying to take it all in. But some very good speakers, and one of whom was this fellow. His name is Thanawat Tyson, and he is the Assistant Director General of the FAO. And if you know anything about UN politics, the Assistant Director of whatever it is always the one who actually does the work and is like the real director. It's just something about that with the UN that I don't quite understand how their hierarchy of designation works, but it's always the case that the assistant director is really the director, the one doing the work and meeting all the people. So anyway, Thanawat is a great fellow, and I think his stewardship of it is very good. And then I had the pleasure of meeting him afterwards, and we had a nice chat. And very interested. He's very interested in sustainable livestock management and soil health and all that. And that was an important theme at this conference. That was definitely a very important theme. Of course, I did what I could to help, add to that theme. And these are just, some other people that I met or who I knew before. This is Charles Crafton Atkins. He's running a regenerative grazing project in Mongolia, and he lives in the UK. Him and I had been chatting for quite a bit online before, so it was nice to meet up with him there. Of course, I'm always promoting the Soil4Climate hat, but you see in my note here, it says Monbiot's story. I don't know how many of you remember the Monbiot savory debate at Oxford in 2022, I think it was. Yeah, the summer or spring of 2022. Alan Savory and George Monbiot had a debate at Oxford. And at the very end, they took questions from the audience. And the very last question, the way it ended, was a question from a little girl. It sounded like she was like 12. And it was just a beautiful, I'm sorry, I don't remember what the actual question was, but it was just beautiful. And it just sort of set the whole thing in perspective. And I almost wish the debate between Savory and Monbiot had started with the question from that girl. Well, it turns out that girl is Charles's daughter. He told me that later. So he had gone to that, and he brought his daughter with with him. And it just made the whole thing feel wholesome. Alan Savory has obviously been an influence on me. That's partly why I started Soil4Climate. And then here is this debate with George Monbiot, and then, at Oxford. And so all these big players are getting involved in all these important themes. And then that whole thing ends with this question from this little girl, and it just brought it all back to earth, you know. And it turns out it was Charles's daughter, and here I am hanging out with him. So, the takeaway there is that they're saying all politics is local, and Alan says, that institutions, are different than people, and institutions don't make decisions, people do, it and it's something we need to keep in mind, and that point just comes back to me again and again when I go to these meetings. These are meetings of people. They're in a building called the UN headquarters, but it's people. It's people you meet in the hallway and in the cafeteria, and that's a important theme just to keep in mind in general. These entities, they have the power or not that we give them, and they take forward the message or not that we embody them to, and we can be part of that or not. And I'm choosing to be part of it, and I encourage you to be part of it also. This is another great fellow I met. His name is Joshua Leiser. He's an ecologist with a group called Afro Scouts, and he's also running a project called the Africa Pastoralist Youth Initiative, and he's a Maasai from Tanzania, and it turns out he's good friends with the Soil4Climate Tanzania Maasai representative, and his name is Ndinga Endicon. And you've seen pictures. I've been posting pictures from Ndinga from Tanzania, and donations to Soil4Climate have supported him. And then on the other side of the border is Dalmas Team Patti in Kenya, and I didn't know that Joshua was best friends with my colleague Ndinga in Tanzania, and I just found that out. So that's the beauty of going to these things, is you just meet people who are themselves stakeholders, obviously, or they wouldn't bother showing up. And so these are just great networking opportunities. And so whatever you want to say about whether or not this organization is captured by this interest, and the UN this and the World Bank that, and whatever, the fact is that there's just good people. It's good people coming, trying to do the right thing, and trying to use the resources that are available. And the FAO is one of those resources. And I'm very happy for it. Here's Frederick Leroy. I can never get his last name right. I hope he won't mind. But very big into advocacy about the nutritional benefits of eating meat, and he's very caught up in the meat versus not meat diet narrative, and so the whole Eat Lancet thing, he's very much engaged in that. He's sort of one of the people who has a different perspective, and of course he recognizes the importance of regenerative grazing. And him and I have been colleagues for a while. And now some point I want to bring your attention to is that outside of the FAO event on the first day, and they were only there for the first day, was protests set up by Greenpeace, and they were protesting, factory farming, and they had these people wearing masks of pigs or cows behind cages, and it says farms, not factories, and it says Greenpeace. And It was a peaceful protest. It wasn't nasty. No one was shouting or anything like that, but they were sort of chanting. And most of the people going to the conference were just sort of being polite and nodding and taking pictures, but there wasn't a lot of interaction. And whatever, it is what it is. But I was very happy to hear Thanawa Tyson mention them in his opening comments. So the Assistant Director General of the FAO did acknowledge that these protesters were there and did say that we need to listen to them. And there was good discussion about the difference between, factory farming and factory-like animal husbandry and animal husbandry in nature. And so this is one of the themes that we have to always keep in mind and work with. And so I look forward to corresponding or interacting with the Greenpeace people, who organize this. In fact, if anyone wants to help get me in touch with them, I'll be happy to talk to them about what we're doing. We don't see a conflict of interest here at all. It's only when people say, "Oh, you can't eat meat," that when they turn it into the food and they separate the food discussion from the management discussion, that's when there's a disconnect. But as long as we're focusing on the management discussion, on the outcome in terms of environmental health, like soil, and particularly in dryland areas, then there's no problem. Okay, so let's go on. Oh, so here's another picture of the protests. And again, they were only there for the first day. This is like a week-long conference. They came for one day, they made their point, and then they didn't show up again after that. But one of the real joys for me, in addition to, the main part of the conference. So when you go to these events, the main part of the conference is like the atrium and like the main conference rooms on the first floor and the second floor. But, the FAO is like a 9-story building with offices, dozens, 100 offices. I'm not sure how many offices there are, but, lots of offices, lots of people working there. And they're doing their thing, and they're not even partaking in the conference on the first floor or whatever. There's always conferences at the FAO. This just happened to be the one I went to. So for a lot of people, this is their full-time work. They come in and they go to their office and they work on, their field of expertise. And one of the offices is this soil health office. And you would never even know it. It just has a nondescript door like any other door in an office building. But when you open it, it's like, oh my God, this is wonderful. This is where all the soil research is organized for the FAO and where the papers are written regarding soil and organic carbon, including this one, Soil Organic Carbon, the Hidden Potential. So I was thrilled by that. When I went there, I wasn't even thinking, oh, I'm gonna see them. But a colleague of mine said, oh, you got to go to the soils office. You would think I would have been aware of that, but I was just so caught up with the livestock conferencing part of it that I forgot that, oh yeah, the soils office for the FAO is right on the 6th floor, 5th floor, whatever it is, 7th floor. Just go visit them. So I, completely unannounced, just knocked on the door, came in, and they were thrilled. Like they were thrilled to have someone show up who cared and respected their work. And that was another sort of meaningful moment for me where I realized, yeah, these are just people, scientists who care about soil doing their job. And they love to have visitors. And again, sort of an unexpected, very positive connection and takeaway. and then just shelves of their books and papers and posters in a dozen different languages, by the way, not just English. Excuse me. There's the French version next to the English version, but it goes on and on. There's Chinese, there's Russian. And you think about the logistics of that as well. Every time you make a white paper or a little book, you have to have a dozen versions of it. I mean, I'm not sure how they figure that out, but they were there, and just help yourself. So I was honestly pretty happy about that. That this was sort of like a high point for me for 2025. Not just a conference itself, but literally walking into the soils office at the UNFAO. That for me was an important takeaway. That really was. And then here is outside of the office and some of their posters. And then they had something called the Speaker's Corner or something like that, where you could have 15 minutes right in the main atrium at this mic here. And I signed up for one of those, and I did get my sort of 15 minutes of glory talking about regenerative grazing, and I even suggested that they change the name of the conference. Instead of calling it Sustainable Livestock, they call it Regenerative Livestock, and they really focus on that question. What is regenerative livestock? What does that mean? And they really go, eyeball deep into that discussion. And so we'll see what happens, and we'll see what influence I can impact, or you, the watchers, can impact. I just went out of presentation mode. Let me just quickly go back to presentation mode. Yeah, okay. So then immediately after that conference was the conference, the ILRI conference on sustainable beef investments, and the investment roundtable, and this was an invitational conference, and I was very happy to be part of that. And again, a lot of great speakers, including Charles, who I showed you from the previous, and now we're investment is obviously going to be a key part of it, but nothing here. We're not talking about factory farming. We're talking about regenerative, sustainable livestock management. But what is the investment model for that going to look like? And so it's a little more focused on specific projects and a little more attention to the economics of it. And this woman is Lauren Thakar. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Czech last name. Wonderful, wonderful woman. And she hosted the panel that I was on. And it turns out she's also one of the leaders of the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, which begins in 2016. And so that's very exciting. So all these sort of overlaps, and we'll be saying more about that in a minute. This is Fiona Flinton. She is a senior livestock research scientist with the International Livestock Research Institute with ILRI. And she was one of the organizers for this event. And this fellow, I have his name written down, but he is with Robobank, They're a Dutch bank, and he talked, matter of factly about the challenges of investing in sustainable livestock, and what's the business model for that, and it was really fascinating, frankly. There are people who are trying to change the system, even within banks themselves. They understand that this huge creature called the livestock industry has to transform somehow, and they're wrestling with that issue. And it was really an honor and pleasure to be able to be at this event. And then afterwards, on the final day, they took us to an organic farm and ranch in the foothills, about an hour outside of Rome, and it was just beautiful opportunity to see that. This is my buddy Joshua Lizer again, wearing the Soil4Climate hat, and so this is us getting the tour of the organic, sustainable livestock farm and ranch. And great interview with the lady that's running the operation and her history and how she got into all this. It's just really great. And then what I'm hopeful for in 2026 is the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, and lots of great stuff. Just Google IYRP, International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, and I'm now part of the climate working group for this initiative. So hopefully you'll be seeing more about that. So I think that maybe does it. Oh yeah, just a couple of others. Let's go back to this. So Soil4Climate in 2026 is really going to be moving forward, or certainly attempting to move forward, with our big project called Enkap Osaligi, which in the Maasai language means promised land, and where you want to do regenerative grazing, holistic planned grazing to be specific, on Maasai lands in Kenya and Tanzania. And in the map here, this is Kenya, and this is Tanzania, and this area here in green is what's referred to as Maasai lands. There's no specific boundary as to where Maasai lands begins or ends, but this is the general area that's referred to where most Maasai people and herders live, and that includes approximately 2 million people with 1 million cows on about 10 million hectares. And to get even more specific, we want to start in two subdivisions, one in Kenya and one in Tanzania. The one in Kenya is called Nkurika, and the one in Tanzania is called Mborit. And here are the statistics on those two. And, as people who follow Soil4Climate know, we've already done training on this side in holistic management through the Mara Training Center, which is a savory hub in western Kenya. And we want to start to do the same on the Tanzania side as well. And so when you see us doing funding efforts, raising money, it's sort of going toward colleagues in these two areas. Okay, so I think that does it for that slideshow. So I'm going to stop that share, and let me just confirm that this is still streaming into end of slideshow. Click to exit. Okay, and then David. Okay, so sorry, I've been kind of babbling. So let me get other voices here. So David, you're raising your hand. Do you want me just to? So it says allowed to talk. Okay, David. So you can talk now, and I can also elevate you to be a panelist, but or you can just talk. But anyway, the floor is yours now, David. Go for it.
Hi, Seth. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Thank you so much for your work in this area. I've been following you for a long time and following Alan Savory for a very long time. And I appreciate what you do. And I just have 2 points to make. One, I'm fascinated with your Kenya work, not only from the perspective of holistic management work there, but I have a piano student there. I'm a piano teacher and he's in the Nairobi area. He's very good. And it so happens that he's also interested in dairy farming. And I bought him a keyboard so he could practice piano, and he's become very good. And since he's such a good guy, I bought him a cow.
Oh, oh
and
wow.
and so his family is milking it. And I don't know that he's knowledgeable about holistic management, but I hope to educate him. And I had not known where your area in Kenya is of operation. It's kind of across the country from him. He's near Nairobi. Tika is his subdivision there near Nairobi. Anyway, I'm just fascinated with that, and I hope to visit him. Uh, just because I like the guy and I want to go there, and it would be neat to visit your holistic management area in Kenya also. And then the other comment I wanted to make is I was glad to hear that there's bankers and money people interested in this thing. And I'll close with a question. What do you think of the White Oak Pastures model? And can you think of, it seems to me that that's a very financially viable model. Will Harris is buying up land every year. It seems he's up to 5,000 acres. Are there some big money people that are taking a look at that and thinking, "Wow, could we franchise this thing and make it like McDonald's?" Will Harris would be the first little McDonald's, and then rubber stamp those things all over the country via a franchise model or something. So that's the extent of my comments and questions.
Well, David, thank you so much. And it's just so awesome that you bought a cow for a colleague in Kenya. Um, we've been trying to do that. The rates for a new cow have kind of hovered around $300. So so when we raise money through Soil4Climate, that's one of the things that goes toward. Um, in it, in a couple years ago, there was really bad drought, and we kind of became like a relief organization, and we were providing hay, quite frankly. So it's hard to work on planning for your whole regenerative grazing plan and training when you're in the middle of the drought. And then with COVID, those there was a few years there that was just really devastating between COVID and the drought. And so just trying to build up the base again and get and recreate a herd. It's really important. And as people who do regenerative grazing understand, there aren't enough animals. We're going to need many more animals in the world to help restore these desertified areas, and and they'll get brought into the herd, as the land recovers. So anyway, giving money to increase cow herds is an important thing to do. So anyway, David, thanks for that. In terms of Will Harris and his model, well, I mean, I don't know specifically about his expansion model, but I have complete faith in anything Will Harris does. I gave a seminar down there. He invited me to give a day long seminar there a few years ago, and I've toured all over his property. I've been there twice, and this property is also the subject of a peer-reviewed paper by Jason Roundtree that I cite quite often. So he's done a remarkable transformation in that area, and it's not just the soil health. That his Bluffton County, Georgia, was literally one of the poorest counties in the country, and he has just completely turned it around. They're putting out something like $100,000 in paychecks every week to an area which was literally one of the poorest areas in the country. So the economic story there is just off the charts, and
That's great.
he's done it all with holistic management. I mean, he'll be the first one to tell you. And and the beauty of sort of a Will Harris and a Gabe Brown story is neither of them approached any of this from an altruistic perspective or soil, and certainly not climate. I can assure you, climate was the last thing on their minds. They were just trying to survive.
Interesting.
They were just surrounded by poor and dying farms, and they were just trying to survive. And as Gabe said, I couldn't afford the pesticides anymore. I just couldn't afford them. And I don't remember exactly what Will Harris's sort of epiphany moment was, but he had a similar one. And a lot of the practitioners, some of the healthiest land on earth at this point, comes from people who just wanted to survive. They just wanted their families and their family businesses to survive. There was no
That's cool.
there was no larger altruistic goal. They weren't closet environmentalists, who just happened to be, stuck in a rancher's body. No.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's great.
So anyway, I don't know his specific business plan in terms of buying up property in his county, but good for him. I'm glad I'm doing it. I'd much rather him have, stewardship of that property. And when you go to Will Harris's, I don't know if it's still the case, but literally his neighbor, it's the same thing when you go to Gabe Brown. His neighbor is in rapeseed, canola oil, year after year after year. Will Harris's neighbor and all the people around there are in cotton or peanuts. It's
Right.
it's Georgia, and you literally can just stand on the street and you can just turn your head and you can just see the difference in these two properties. And then when it rains and the water drains off the land and where it meets in the culvert, the ditch on the other side, it goes under the road, and it comes out, and you can stand there and you can see, like on Will Harris's, the soil there is very clay like soil, so it's sort of reddish, and you could see what literally looks like red water just coming into the culvert from the other side.
Yeah.
Like literally like red. And then the water coming off of Will's property is just crystal clear.
Yeah.
And it's
Proving what Alan Savory has been telling us for decades.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Ap- right, right, precisely. It's so plainly obvious. And then you can also see it visually in terms of the level of the land. So, and the same thing with Gabe. At the boundaries, there's almost like a 2 foot drop. And you see this bare land that, it's bare most of the year when it's not growing peanuts or cotton or soybeans or rapeseed. And and there's it's like this. It's like a 2 foot drop off
Yeah.
between the land that's in an annual commodity and the land that's in perennial grassland. Like you can literally see
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Amazing.
it
Well,
is amazing.
McDonald's site number one has been proven. Back in the day, 80 years ago or whenever McDonald's started, they wanted to make fast food hamburgers, and so they had to prove it at one location. And boy, did they prove it! And now it's exploded, and it's all over the world. And to me, that's how I see white oak pastures now. I have been following this movement for a long time, but Will Harris, more than anybody else in America, at least that I know of, seems to have pulled it all together, and he's making it work for the land, for the animals, for the people, for the community, and financially. And if a big finance guy, it seems like now is the time for finance people to really get aware of what he's doing and blow this thing up.
Yeah, yeah. And he's pretty savvy. I'm sure he's well aware of that. All
Yeah.
right. David, thank you very much. I'm happy to
Thank
elevate
you.
you to be a panelist if you want, but let me get Klaus in here because he has had his hand up. Klaus, I'm just going to promote you to be a panelist so that you'll also have video. David, the thing is, which I'm also learning by being the host here. When you're just talking, and I'm looking at the Zoom, and you're just streaming, there's no video, so your voice, not Zoom, in Facebook. So it's actually better if you're going to talk that you become a panelist, because then at least people see your face. So if you want to say more, I'll bring you back in as a panelist. Klaus, so I'm promoting
Sure.
you to be a
After
panelist.
Klaus or whatever is fine.
Right, right. So Klaus, I'm promoting you to be a panelist now. So if you want to unmute yourself and turn on your video,
Okay.
then the floor is yours.
All
Go
right.
for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we have been, I love what you're doing, and we have been going back for a number of years now, connected and sort of ran along a parallel track also with the Sierra Club. So thank you so much for all your work. It's really amazing. Um, so I took a path maybe 2.5 years ago or so where I joined a group of techies starting to work on AI. And my mission, and we were actually a beta team training AI, in its formative stages, working mostly with OpenAI, OpenAI, ChatGPT. And so my role was to train it on food and agriculture, and to have it understand the interrelationship of food and agriculture with climate change in particular. So, so we now have some really smart AI technology that's moving into the field, and it will take a little while to be adapted. But it's not replacing anyone. It's really a support tool. I think it's important to understand that all this really is a helper. You have to understand it as such. You can't fully trust it because it still makes mistakes. So you have to screen what it responds, but it has a library of knowledge that's just absolutely stunning because everything we have ever known about soil science and the interrelation, hydrologic cycles and all of it's in there. And the responses from the system are instant and immediate. It's like a living library, and you can talk with it. It's communicative. So the challenge that we have in the regenerative transition, and this is really where I focused my training on, is that if you tell a farmer to do something different and put in a perennial grain or integrate livestock, or bring in maybe sorghum or kernza or something like this. In order to restore the soil, this farmer is now stuck with who do I sell this to, right? So you have on the one hand the decisions you're making on the farm side, and on the other hand you have markets like CPG manufacturers and catering organizations who don't know yet how to integrate these different products into their supply chain. And then even if you can find a buyer, a market, and you have a farmer, you still now need to find an aggregator and a processing mill, right? So you need to build the entire system. So this is what's happening this year in 26 with AI, where AI is looking at food as a system, from a systems perspective. And then you're dealing with the challenges that we have where resources, USDA cuts in manpower and in budgets that are really significant. You basically have to have know-how farm specific because each farm is unique, right? I mean, unique soil, access to water, climate, tools they have, and so on. So those are the realities that are driving the industry. So what is happening in AI? There are some what I call silo operators. So there are companies that are training, mostly people like me. I mean, so you have a small group of individuals. They're training AI on satellite monitoring. So they now have developed a skill where AI can basically define the health of your soil based on the plants that it produces. And the color of the leaves, the density, and so on. So satellite is becoming a huge helper, satellite observation with AI interpretation. Crop monitoring and crop evaluations. You can literally show your crop to the AI and ask it, is this okay? And the AI may say, well, you need to rehydrate, or there's a disease spreading here. I mean, the AI can simply on a picture basis identify what's going on with your crop. Soil science, this is anything we know about soil anywhere has been embedded, in this AI. And then I already talked about market demand and logistics. One thing that I'm most excited about, and that's what we are working on with our group, Food with Thought, is on Scope 3 valuations. Tesla last year collected $2.7 billion on Scope 3 emission offsets. And I think all in all, they have already collected over $8 billion on Scope 3 offsets. And so why wouldn't you get this to farmers? And then the way that this whole carbon trading business has been set up for farms is basically not really manageable. It doesn't work. It's too expensive. You need to have thousands of acres in order for that to start working. So we have developed a set of algorithms and protocols that would allow farmers to tokenize ecosystem benefits. So improvements in soil health, in nutrient density, in biodiversity, in water holding capacity of the soil. So in aggregation, and then put that on the market, but not as a security. So if you stay below the securitization process, then the cost becomes very manageable and you can include smaller farms. And the only way you can do this is by using AI to have that really cost effective. So those are some of the things. I'm glad to answer questions. You can literally talk with the agents. I can bring the agent online and you can ask the AI itself questions and it will have a conversation with you.
So, Klaus, what's your hope for 2026?
My hope is that we can put out technical service providers and a system with AI tools to handle farm transition projects at scale. And by putting farmers on a regenerative contract, typically a 5-year contract, we can tokenize this transition by developing, what is the anticipated improvement in soil health, in water retention, in biodiversity, and so on. We can tokenize this contract and put it on the market and create a revenue stream for this farmer that helps with the capitalization, with financing the transition. Because when you're asking a farmer to transition, it's like really do it. That means probably new equipment or some different equipment, probably a loss of yield, finding new markets. So there's cost involved. And so in order to provide an incentive to do that, we would create this revenue stream by selling it to Walmart, to Kroger, Pepsi, all these companies that have made enormous commitments to support a regenerative transition, but don't really have the tools to engage in it.
So are you going to, help in that process? I mean, are you going to speak to the Walmarts of the world, or let's just say the box stores of the world?
Yeah,
What will be your role, or the role of you and your colleagues?
and our company. Yeah. So for example, we're working with a company it's called Salmon Safe. I mean, we're just negotiating with them. Um, they are providing labels and accreditations, so to speak. So we are a white label back office software provider. So we are providing AI software as a service. And we need these front companies. I mean, like you, like now Soil for Climate could be one of those fronts that go and develop the certification label, and we provide the infrastructure that you need behind it. It's pretty complex to develop all these protocols, and you need to have MRV standards, meaning you need measurement, reporting, and verification in place that meets pretty high level standards. So we are back office providers for front companies, preferably NGOs.
Do you have any specific benchmarks that you want to reach in 2026? Like, do you want to have, X number of companies, engaged this year? And I mean, I know you're based in Europe. Are you regional, or just very
I'm
quickly, because I want to get to some other speakers too,
yeah,
but
I'm
just
in Bend, Oregon. We are an Oregon company. Yeah, no, so the technology is, we are at a stage right now where we're using AI technology that has limited scalability. So we can take on 2 to 3 companies, like fronts, right? Like Salmon Safe, that can do the certification. And once we are able to provide this proof of concept, then we need to move onto a platform, and that's pretty expensive. That's like a six-figure thing to transfer this entire project onto an AI platform.
all right. Well, listen, thank you for your contributions. Would you say in general that you're hopeful? Like, do you feel positive? I mean, we could sort of be honest here. A lot of things happened last year that I was really kind of disappointed by, but I'm hoping 2026 will be better.
Yeah, I was invited by Kansas State University for the AI agriculture symposium to speak there. They invited me to come back and actually host a session for next year's symposium. Um, there is an accelerator program here in Oregon, that's focused specifically on AI implementations. So we know the product works; it's rock solid. Now to get it into the market, that's our challenge right now, is to find partners, who really see the potential in this and are willing to pilot this.
Klaus, I would love to host a whole separate session just on AI and ag with you, just on that topic. Um, because as you know, there's also a lot of pushback against that. in the regen sector. And some of that I think at least is justified. So we should have a session just on that, which you and I can co-host. So I'll follow up with you on that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks so much. Let me get Rebecca Tickell in here now, and Klaus, if you would mute yourself so that we don't get the feedback. So Rebecca Tickell is a great champion of communications around this message and is one of the leaders. I apologize, Rebecca, I'm not even sure what official title you're using, but certainly one of the founders and leaders of Kiss the Ground and the whole Common Ground movie and Kiss the Ground movie series of Kiss the Ground, then Common Ground, and then the third one will be coming out, which will be called a Groundswell. So, Rebecca, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and share some reflections on 2025 and what you're looking forward to 2026.
Thank you, Seth. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy to be with one of my favorite people who's taught me so much. And what an incredible voice you are. I've learned so much from you, as always, constantly teaching me and questioning different ideas, even this morning, as a matter of fact. So I thank you for that. I am director, producer, writer of Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, and the upcoming film Groundswell, all of which focus on regenerative agriculture. And the upcoming film Groundswell is our global journey around the world, looking at all of the Earth's ecosystems and how regular people are using regeneration not only to save their microclimates, but to attract rain, to feed themselves, to create peace, to create their economies. It was definitely an eye-opening journey that I went on with my family and my children. And we're working on that every single day, and that will be available on Prime Video on June 5th. And you can watch Common Ground and Kiss the Ground right now on Prime Video. And that's what we do here at Big Picture Ranch in Ojai, California, as we make movies and devote our lives to sharing these stories of regeneration.
So, is there any theatrical release?
There will be. We'll do what we always do, and we'll release, we usually are theatrical, because we're an independent movie studio. We're not like doing multiple week-long runs in theaters, in mainstream theaters. Usually it's a one-night single engagement in the communities that request it. So we'll have the same type of theatrical launch. It'll inevitably go to hundreds of theaters, but usually it will be hosted by an organization that would then host and moderate the Q&A and invite other panelists to join them and just focus on a single community event in a theater talking about what practices are happening in their region and promoting the work that they do.
And when did you say the official release on Prime Video is going to be?
June 5th, World Soil Day.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then the theatrical sort of one-offs where there's a speaker panel and that type of thing. Can that happen before that, or does that have to happen after?
It will have to be after. One of the challenges that we have becoming mainstream communicators around this issue is we have to kind of fit this, I'll call it the round peg into the square hole, because regeneratives in circles. And so, we have to conform to the degree that we can, but we always withhold education rights and some limited theatrical rights so that we can do the work on the ground that we want to do. And because if we just handed it over to the mainstream distributors, it would just get uploaded onto the streamer and that would be it. And our work is much more involved than that. We always create an educational cut. We just created a cut for the current administration of Common Ground called, I don't even remember what we called that version, but that has gone around. It was seen by the Secretary of Agriculture and by the administration, and has been really warmly and positively received. In spite of all of the bad news, there is maybe a little bit of good news that there's some learning going on there. And so we'll do the same thing with Groundswell. We'll make it free. We'll do an educational cut. We'll promote anybody that wants to host a screening in their local theater, and we'll support that process. And we work hard to retain those rights so that we can continue to work with our community to educate people.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you know that I was, obviously you know, but for the sake of the audience, that I had the pleasure and honor of hosting the Boston or sort of Massachusetts premiere of Common Ground, and I did that at a local, repertoire theater, near me, where it's, like an old school, privately owned theater, and I know the owner there, and we had an event there, and we had a panel with the Sierra Club, 350.org, a couple of sort of regional producer types, and it was great. We had a band.
You crushed it, Seth. You're amazing.
It was a whole fun thing. It was actually my band.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
So it's a gig. It was a gig. So,
But that's what we love to do. I mean, I think it's inviting people who are passionate about this issue, who are already leading the way
yeah,
in their communities on this issue, to invite them to host a screening and to frame it from the perspective of what's happening within your community and to
yeah,
promote that, and so that people
yeah.
can get involved.
And yeah, so let me put out a word, or sort of a promo for this to the Soil4Climate community. Get in touch with Rebecca if you want to host one of these private events at a repertoire theater in your area, and have your own little panel and educational opportunity. Because from my point of view, it was amazing. I mean, that we got the Sierra Club and the Boston chapter of 350.org involved was a real coup, because there's still a little bit of uncertainty and around, well, what's the relationship with livestock and climate, and the Sierra Club is an environmental organization, and both those groups have traditionally had an anti-livestock perspective, but the fact that they both those groups, were co-sponsors of this event, I considered a real coup. It showed that people in those organizations are kind of beginning to get it.
Thanks to the work that everybody that's participating in this is doing. I mean, it's been so frustrating, the myths around regeneration, the myths of the inclusion of livestock in that process. You've been one of the people who's helped open my eyes around that. In fact, we interviewed you for Groundswell at the Groundswell conference in the UK. However, unfortunately, Seth ended up getting outshined by Prince William and Gabe. So we're not going to get to hear the incredible words and interview that he shared with us at that conference, because Gabe has been such a through line of our story. And then to answer your question, David Hawkins, hello. Yes, we also filmed at the Harris Ranch, White Pastures, and he's incredible. He and his family are in the film, and they're kind of the cap at the end, what they've been doing, and they're wonderful in the film. White Oak Pastures, Will Harris.
In which film?
In Groundswell, that's upcoming.
Okay, good. I'll be glad to see it then.
Yeah. Oh, good. We went on a global journey and we saved the US for last. And so we highlight him at the very end of the film, and it's a great section. He's got some great one-liners, let me tell you. It'll definitely make you laugh, and it will definitely move you to tears.
Well, and his accent is just wonderful too. So
he goes, there's 3 types of people in our town. There's the people that go to church. There's the good people that go to church. There's the bad people that don't. And then there's the Harrises.
Yeah, both times where I've visited him, I've been very inspired, and it was a real honor when he invited me to give a seminar at he has an educational nonprofit called CFAR. I think it stands for Center for Agricultural Resilience. And I gave a seminar there, and actually Trey Cates, I don't know if you remember Trey, but he he was a senior staffer with the Savory Institute for several years. He's doing his own consulting now, but so he was there. So yeah, it's great. It's great, very inspiring organization. And
We could make a whole movie just on him and his family and their, how their
oh
story of how they got to where they are and his sort of wake up call and then just the incredible work that's happened since then. It's phenomenal. I wish
well,
I
he
would
yeah,
did.
vote for that. I would vote for that. I would donate money to that effort.
Well, that's good to know. It's always good to know where the interest lies because ultimately it's where we point our cameras. So thank you for that bit of
yeah.
information.
And again, that saying, all politics is local. Um, and and it really doesn't get more local than something like Bluffton, Georgia.
Yeah.
A- and and all of the themes that we're immersed in these days through the polarization of media, like the environmental theme or the climate theme or the meat theme or the not meat theme or the urbanites versus the rural folks, the producers versus the consumers, and sort of liberal family values versus conservative family values. All of those, all of those themes that, according to the media, seem to have hard lines. That all just goes away. There isn't any of that polarization once you start working and visiting ranchers, talking about soil health, in conservative southern parts of the country, and then you look at the economy that they're bringing in, and you look at the diversity of people working there. It's just nothing but inspiring on every level, no matter what you're measuring. If you're measuring an environmental indicator, or an economic indicator, or a social indicator, and by social, pick your indicator.
Yeah. I mean, one of the places that we visited for Groundswell, we actually started at a refugee settlement in northern Uganda. And that was quite eye-opening to see how these regenerative practices are not only healing the landscape and ultimately feeding people who are starving, who have nothing, and who are healing literally with, from gunshot wounds, but they're healing their community, they're healing their families. Some of these are child-led households, they're children without parents who are learning how to grow a food forest around their hut in this refugee settlement. I mean, if they can do it, then what the heck is the rest of the world doing? And that's what we saw time and time and time again, is that when people get the information for how to manage the land for regeneration, that it's healing on every single level. It's nourishing on every single level.
Right.
And there's just no question about whether or not this is the way forward. And there's no question about whether or not we can do it. I think the question is, can we get out of the way to let that happen? Can we educate enough people so that we get the momentum to reach the tipping point so that we can heal our planet and therefore heal humanity? I mean, the planet's going to be fine, but are we going to be okay is the question. And
Right.
I really believe that the work that you are doing, the work that everyone on this call is doing, I do believe that we're reaching that momentum. And with Kiss the Ground, I think when we started, there was about 3.5 million acres in transition to regenerative agriculture. And I believe the latest count is over 80 million acres in the US in transition to regeneration. And the goal is 100 million acres in the US, which would be 10% of ag lands in the US. My numbers are a little loose, but more or less. And then globally speaking, we would need to reach 1 billion acres into transition to regeneration to hit that tipping point. So that's the goal. With Groundswell, that's the goal I think we all can agree on, that we need to reach that tipping point as soon as possible. Because once we reach that tipping point, we're unstoppable. And what the pathway forward becomes easier and clearer. And those people that are doing it are going to be the one that have resources and health and wealth ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Well,
speaking of regeneration, I just had, I had kind of a routine surgery a month ago, and then 2 weeks ago it went awry. So I'm recovering from from a near-death experience, and I got out of bed to come and be with you all because I'm so passionate about the work that you're doing, and ultimately to thank you for being, for being who you are and for inspire. Like, we see you here at Big Picture Ranch, and we're listening and we're trying to figure out how we can reflect that in our work and to really honor you for your hard work, because I'm also learning how to be a regenerative farmer here at Big Picture Ranch. We turned our barn into a movie studio, but I'm trying to learn how to be a soil steward. And so each and every day is something that I'm learning how to do, but I also am regenerating myself right now. So I do have to go back to bed.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I so love you all, and I so appreciate you all. And it sounds, Seth, like you need to do some regeneration too.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a cold.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you can't get it through Zoom.
Well,
All right.
love goes a long way. That's the
So,
core of all of this. I really believe.
yeah, yeah. You know what's interesting is you can't get my cold through Zoom, but we can heal each other,
That's right.
just through having good communication.
And you're an
So
excellent communicator, Seth. I love it. I thank you for constantly, pushing the boundaries for people's thought process, for doing it with humor sometimes and with passion at other times. And thank you for all that you do and bringing us together and keeping these conversations alive.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much also for those comments. And you go get better, okay? You go drink plenty of fluids and have lots of sleep.
I will. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
everybody,
Thank you all.
let's thank Rebecca for coming and joining us for a few minutes while she
Thank you.
recovers.
Pleasure meeting you.
And then we'll
Pleasure
Rebecca,
meeting
you
you
and I
too.
will talk afterwards about how to,
Thank you, Rebecca.
help promote the Common Ground movie when it comes out on
Groundswell.
Groundswell.
Yes.
Yeah, I love how all three movies have the word ground in them. That was just
It's like having three kids named Bob. It's really
just
confusing, if I'm honest.
brilliant,
That's it.
brilliant, brilliant concept. Kiss the ground, common ground, and groundswell. I'm just curious, when you came up with this trilogy, was that sort of always part of the idea that you'd have the word ground in all three of them?
No, I mean, we did Kiss the Ground. It took us 7 years to make it. We weren't even sure if we were going to be able to finish it. And then by the time we did, COVID was happening, theatrical shut down, and we got rejected by everyone. And it literally took Laura Dern and Leonardo DiCaprio threatening to cough on Ted Sarandos at Netflix to get them to agree to take it. And they didn't even know what they were taking when they got it. It literally got uploaded without them even watching it. And then they didn't realize what they had until it became actually a sensation and it got into the mainstream. And now the word regeneration is part of the nomenclature. And it was kind of a miracle the way the whole thing happened. And we had no intention whatsoever for a second film. And Gabe Brown was the reason that the second film got made, because he introduced us to someone who wanted us to tell a little bit more of the story and pull back the curtain on what was holding us back. And so that was really fun to make Common Ground. And we did it in the middle of lockdown, which is why the film focused solely on the US, is because that's all we could do. We couldn't really do any international travel whatsoever. And I thought I knew a lot about regeneration after Kiss the Ground, but honestly, Common Ground was hands down my favorite movie that we had ever made at the time. And I still love Common Ground, but I do think that Groundswell is going to kick the pants off of any other film we've made. But Common Ground was, you can watch it on Prime. I love that film. And then Groundswell, we go on this global journey. And again, my eyes were opened. I've learned so much along the way. I still feel like I'm a beginner. Every time I think I know something about this, I learn something new and I'm amazed. And so I think it's all of you doing the work out there that continue to educate people, including myself, through your real world work. So thank you.
Yeah, and just speaking of real world, and I know you have to go, but Common Ground was probably better in terms of traditional storytelling because, quite frankly, it had some tragedy.
Yeah. And
Um,
also, we did it in 2 years instead of seven. We had less people influencing the story. So it really just came through what we wanted to say. And, um, none of us could have expected that Gabe would get ALS. And so in the middle of filming, suddenly we found out that he got one of these classic farmer diseases, and likely from his exposure from using pesticides and herbicides for so long. That's who there's a lot of debate about these anecdotal stories, but time after time after time, and case after case after case, including within my own family, a legacy farming family, all of my aunts and uncles, my dad, my cousins, including myself, are affected by the chemicals that they all would stand in the vats of DDT and 2,4-D, and the diseases within my own family, Parkinson's disease, cancer, other really unusual neurological illnesses. So, how long do we call it anecdotal before we have the science have integrity to reflect what we already know to be true? And that's part of the story of Common Ground.
Right, right. And then, of course, I haven't seen Common Ground
A
yet.
groundswell. Common Ground
Groundswell.
talks about health, human health. And we don't even mention herbicides or pesticides. I think just briefly we talk about Haber and how these chemicals came from war and Kiss the Ground, but Common Ground dives into it.
Yep.
And so Groundswell, it's really, like I said, it's a different story altogether. It's the global story of regeneration. So
Right,
yeah.
right. And then, so I haven't seen Groundswell yet, um, but regardless of what you get into there, I know you'll be continuing to make great stuff, and I want to talk to you about the sort of the East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania story, because the narratives there. That's why I'm so fascinated by working in that, because all of the themes interface right there with desertification and minority peoples. I mean, the Maasai are a minority peoples even in their own area, and then the influences. There's the whole world is trying to get in to have an impact on agriculture in East Africa right now.
Oh,
And
I know. I saw it firsthand. I mean, I was shocked to learn about the laws that were basically seed colonization in Kenya. I didn't know showing up there that it was outlawed to save seeds or share seeds, and it's punishable with, I think it was a ridiculous fine. It was the equivalent of $20,000 in jail time for sharing your heirloom seeds that you've saved within your family for generations. It tells the story of your culture and your history and your heritage. And they offer, I'm sure many people here know this. I didn't know this, but basically, after they outlawed saving and sharing seeds, even within your own family, they gave people these free GMO seeds and free chemicals for 2 years, which then they were growing food that they couldn't even eat. And at the end of 2 years, when the free seed and the free inputs went away, then they put people onto these bank notes, bank loans that required chemical spraying, and it was attached to any belongings that they had, whether it was their bed or their goat or their utensils. I'm kind of paraphrasing this, but this is what I witnessed and learned while I was there. And essentially, it's the desertification of Kenya through seed colonization, and it was pretty horrific. And then I went up to northern Kenya, where they with the Ma tribe. We went to where the Samburu people are. So we didn't quite make it over to the Maasai, which I'm very sad we didn't get to go. But that was also incredible and eye-opening, and learning how they're saving the grasslands through saving their megafauna. But we don't go nearly into the story that needs to be told, like you
yeah,
shared with me. And that is something that's critical. So yet again, another story that needs to
yeah,
be
another
told well
story.
to the world. And I,
Another story, exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Okay, listen, you've stayed long enough. Go back to bed.
okay,
Have plenty of liquids.
I will.
I'm saying to you what my mom says to me.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
Rebecca.
all. Be
Okay,
well,
thank
everybody.
you so
Happy New
much.
Year.
Okay, thank you. Happy New Year to you too. All right, everyone. That was the great Rebecca Tickell, um, key writer and creator of and filmmaker and editor of the Kiss the Ground movie trilogy, Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, and then the one that's coming out that I just found out just now on Earth Day 2026. I guess that's June 5th. Then that movie will be called Groundswell. So let's hear it for Rebecca Tickell, and she's fighting an illness, and she just had surgery, and she got out of bed to join us for this call. So God bless her. If you want to get in this call, you have to go to the Zoom webinar, and then will elevate you to be a panelist. If any of the other attendees want to be elevated to be a panelist, you let me know, and I will happily elevate you so you can be. In the meantime, I want to share with you some other things which I have prepared, but I didn't want to go on too long, which does tend to be one of my problems, unfortunately. And that is the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. So I'm going to share this screen with you in a second. So let me just go do that now. And there we go. Okay, so 2026. So today is the first year of 2026. It's the first year of the UN International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to in 2026. This and the release of the third movie in the Kiss the Ground trilogy, Groundswell, which will be coming out on World Soil Day. So the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists is a UN designated year, and there's lots of good events coming up. And let me just read to you from the vision statement here: the economic, environmental, and social importance of rangelands and of pastoralists as their custodians are fully recognized, rewarded, safeguarded, and protected worldwide. The International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralists, IYRP 2026, aims to raise awareness of the vital importance of rangelands and pastoralists as their frontline custodians. So I don't need to read all of it here, but you get the idea. I think it's great that this is happening. And then there are different working groups, and let me find that link here. Yeah, working groups. And one of the working groups is the climate change working group. And I'm very happy to say I will be participating in that one, and we'll, hopefully have some sort of event specifically regarding pastoralism and climate change, in which, of course, I would be discussing regenerative livestock management and building soil. Let's just take a quick look at their policy brief. Rethinking climate policy for pastoralism. By the way, my apologies. I've just started to get a little cold. This brief calls for climate policies and finances that recognize pastoralists' specialization to manage climate risk as the foundation of their productivity, sustainability, and adaptive strength. So I just think that's awesome. It's awesome that we're seeing this type of language in a UN context. It's a great opening. And again, you can be sort of cynical and say, oh, who cares? No one pays attention to the UN anyway, let alone some, working group and some other effort. And, you could be right, that's true. Or you could say, well, let's change that. Let's make sure that everybody knows about the UN International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralists, and that everyone knows about the Climate Working Group. And you can direct them to these pages. It's just iyRP.info. You can't get a more better generic URL than that, and just start to promote it. And as I start to get more involved and have activities, affiliated with it, we'll promote that too. Okay, so this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the whole FAO thing. It's very easy to be cynical about UN related organizations and stuff like this. And a lot of people say, oh, it's corporate capture, and they only say what the big ag companies want them to say. That's not true at all. That has not been my experience. The second you walk in there, you're surrounded by people from all over the world: Africa, Asia, Europe, and America. But frankly, it's really Africa and Asia. That's where the growing populations are. And those are the people who are showing up at these UN meetings, the ones that I've been going to. So there's a whole nother generation of people who, who have something to say. And so I think it's great that we have like the FAO and these groups, and they're past the UN. It obviously it comes out of the post World War II period and the World Bank and stuff. And you can get into that discussion as to whether or not that's a good legacy. But that's it's not almost, that was 80 years ago. World War II ended in 1945. It's 2026 now. We can't just be thinking that the UN is just a reflection of the world as it was in 1945. It's not. It's 2026 now. There's whole new generations of people going to these meetings, and they're open to new conversations. So we can either be in those new conversations or not. Okay, let me stop this share, and some people are raising their hands. Yeah, so I'm seeing Mary Butler Stonewell and then Mike Carberry. So Mary, I'm just going to elevate you to be a panelist because it's better for the whole thing if people can see you while you're talking. So I believe I just allowed to talk. And then you should be a panelist now. So Mary, you can talk, and if you can turn on your camera, you can also be visual. All right, Mary, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and at some point give some reflections on 2025 and hopes for 2026. That's sort of the theme for this webinar. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
I'm an anomaly here in the United States, and because of that, I can understand more of what's going on in Africa than most average Americans. I grew up an American nomad. I was removed from society shortly after a 5-year-old little girl in 1970 asked, how come our homes aren't our shelters, seeing the devastation on the borders of coastlines as well as Tornado Alley? And it was like the universe said, that's a perfectly good question. Because here's this little girl. I'm only 5'5" and 117 pounds, okay? Here's this little girl who asked this and finds herself 1 year later learning pastoral construction. I was born in Carson City, Nevada, and had visited all the lower 48 at least once when this happened. And I was removed from society and lived wood cook stove, kerosene lamp, no electricity, no school, and learning pastoral construction. So I was chopping down the tree, letting the tree cure, peeling the log, splitting the log into boards. What's that? That's unreal. This little girl, 6 years old, now she's doing this. I did that until I was 17, and my family's American nomads. And I never went to school during that time. I did 3 years of Calvert courses in the woods, but I never really went to school again until I was like 13. And at 13, I thought I was smart and said I could spell six, and I ended up spelling the other word with an S and an X at the, which did not fare well for me. And that's at 13. Oh, I'm smart. I can spell six. Nope. So, but at 13 years old, you could have dropped me in the middle of the woods and I could have built you a house from the ground up, done all the canning, done all the tans and hides. I could have made you moccasins. I could have hand carved you a cane with your face in it. So there's different types of intelligence in this world. So anyway, I did like half a seventh, half a eighth, half a ninth, and half a 10th in a little period of my life. I kept getting removed from school and put back to work. At 17, I was left on the streets in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, New Year's Eve. And so I couldn't read and write. I tried waitressing and all that other stuff, and it wouldn't work for me. So in 1982, I started working commercial and residential construction when most women were starving to death to get equality. By 1983, I had put myself in school too. I graduated high school at 18 years old and became the youngest female general contracting foreman in 1983. And that's at the same time they were starving themselves in New Hampshire. By 1984, I was the youngest rod busting girl, working on one city center in Portland, Maine. By the time I was 26, I was a rod busting relief foreman. So that if the foreman was gone, I took the blueprints and took over. So here's this little girl that asks this one silly little question. How come our homes aren't our shelters? Strangely enough, I learned construction from the root of construction, pastoral, no power tools, all the way up to overhead cranes, 17-story high rises, bridges, sewage treatment plants, hospitals, schools, you know. So I went the whole scale. And then I came back west and put myself in college with no real prior education and walked away with a 3.2 in architectural and a 3.8 mechanical. So I asked myself after all of this, what am I? You know, I've been trying to answer this question, but how do I tell people what I am? Because there's nobody else is doing what I'm doing. And that is trying to answer, how come our homes are not our shelter? And all my life, I watched around me, being an American nomad, seeing all the things. And I'm autistic, so I see patterns. And I realized that inadequate building codes, when the building codes changed during Egyptian time, building codes said that if you built a house and nature came and destroyed that home, that you were, that engineer was liable and they had to build you a new home. So the responsibility was in the engineer's hands, not the insurance company, not the landowner, not the bank. All right. So I realized that when we stopped blaming them for the travesties that go on, that they have been running amok. It's become a cookie cutter mentality: build up, board up, tear down, rebuild, over and over again. So 300 years we've been rebuilding Tornado Alley in America, which is a sign of insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And then we're going to complain that Portland cement is running out, that our forest can't keep up with America's growing strong and big. No, it's rebuilding itself for 300 years. Think about how many trees would be standing right now if we hadn't boarded up for 300 years along the coast of the United States, let alone in tornado alleys and places like this having to rebuild. Think about on average, 70,000 cubic tons of waste is created every time a community is devastated that cannot be recycled or reprocessed. It has to be dumped. See, so nobody's tracking this. So when I started tracking it, I realized that the carbon, the reason why the carbon shot straight up wasn't particularly because of cars and cows, because come on, think about how many buffalo were in the United States before the white man came, or the Anglo-Saxon came in. I'd rather say it correctly. The Anglo-Saxons came, and the Spaniards and the Germans and the Russians, they all invaded, you know. So needless to say, that spike started right around the Industrial Revolution, but that's also when most building codes completely vanished. Somewhere along the way, they just poof, building codes, they weren't there anymore. And so that carbon is every time that a building has to be rebuilt and torn down. So they're not tracking, okay, we have a natural disaster coming. How much carbon is being put in the air when everybody's evacuating, when everybody's doing the sandbags, when everybody's putting the plywood on all the windows? Think about all the carbon that's going into the air with all the heavy equipment during the rescue, with helicopters and fire departments and boats or whatever they need to do the rescue. And then think about all that carbon that's being put into the air when we're tearing it all down to rebuild it. So nobody's tracking that. And so I've realized that inadequate building codes are the major contributor to climate change degradation. And that's, if we say climate change is an issue, the other side can argue climate change is natural. But humans have interrupted climate change and created climate change degradation. So we've degraded the natural climate process of our planet,
So,
which is,
so Mary, if I may, this is all fascinating and sounds like you have a great history. Um, can you just sort of wrap up for us? We're sort of a soil climate ag, group. I don't know if you were aware of
yes,
that. So if you could just drill your points to reflections from 2025 in sort of in that space. So building, obviously there's an overlap, but if you could find the overlap for us and then tell us what you're looking forward to in 2026, perhaps in the construction industry or how it overlaps with agriculture.
the way it overlaps with agriculture is that 70,000 cubic tons of waste that gets washed across the land with all the contaminants from your garages and whatever. Needless to say, with phytoremediation, we can clean this up, and it can be used for the water, the air, and the soil, depending upon what plants use. But we don't know enough about it. So in 2026, I'm trying to push for the Youth Corps Group of Africa, because they want to do on the ground stuff because they have kids all over Africa. So we're trying to create a project that we can get what they call a first defender done by this thermal tech company. And it's called First Defender. And most police departments and fire departments use it. It's a handheld chemical testing device. You can have liquid in a vial and shoot the laser at the vial, and it'll tell you everything that's in that container. So what we want to do, or what I'm trying to promote to do, is if we have clean test tubes, we have distilled water, we have a little emulsifier, little blender, so we can go out and take samples of different plants from in every farm in Africa. We go to all the farms and test the food that's being grown, let alone checking the terrain as well. We want to go ahead and do that and find out exactly what plants are what type of phytoremediation, because there's one called phytovolatilization, and it's been known to make people sick because of the fact that phytovolatilization takes the toxins out of the soil and it breathes it into the atmosphere. So this is dangerous. And if I remember correctly, the sunflower plant is one of those plants. And so then you create a toxic field that the farmers in the community are working in, they can get sick, or the wildlife can be sick because of it. So my idea is to send them out with these first defenders and the emulsifiers and the distilled water and the test tubes, and then they can blend that up, get it into fine particles, put it in the distilled water, shake it up, shoot, and start marking down. Because the biggest thing we can do to get a bigger grip in 2026 is to have a full spectrum analysis of all plants and their phytoremediation processes. And that's where I want to point out about the land.
Well, listen, I just Googled First Defender based on what you said, I'm going to put the URL in here. It is a product from Fisher Scientific, who is one of the best known companies. And yeah, that looks very, very cool. So I'd love to incorporate that. And I also just dropped the link to that in the Soil4Climate Facebook group as well. So very, very good. So Mary, I need to kind of wrap up because there's some others with their hands up who want to talk. But just very quickly, in a nutshell, what would you say is the realistic opportunity here for how this gets integrated into a regenerative livestock management operation in the years to come? I didn't mean to just say livestock. It's just any type of agriculture, livestock or cropping.
Yeah, my biggest thing is if we can have a better understanding of it, then we could know what plants, because some plants will put nutrients back in the soil, some plants remove the nutrients. So on top of removing chemicals and stuff that we don't want in the soil, we can actually learn more about what crops to rotate to always keep that soil healthy, besides using biochar. Because like I said, I'm a contingency expert. I work with all nonprofits around the world that are working with the impoverished, and I offer free services to all of them as a consultant and have won many awards and accolades through my efforts. And I've been doing it since 2009.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Are you on LinkedIn? Do you want to post a link to your profile or your webpage or
Yeah,
whatever?
I'll go ahead and post a link to my that, and then I'll post a link to the video on how to use the first offender, which is really fun to watch, and it'll
Yeah.
give you a better understanding of it, not just the advertisement, but the actual walkthrough.
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
I just dropped the link to it. First offender handheld chemical identification. So yeah, I agree. That seems very hip. Okay, Mary, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I want to bring in Mike Carberry now, who has had his hand up for a while. So, Mike, I'm going to promote you to be a panelist. And Mary, please make sure your mic is off or your speaker's off now, or your mic, so we don't get feedback. All right, Mike,
Hi, Seth.
the floor
Happy
is
New Year.
yours. Happy New
Mazel
Year.
tov.
Mazel tov. Happy New Year.
Yes,
Yep.
what an interesting year we had in 2025, and looking for great things in 2026. And one of my highlights was taking you to DC to lobby on the Farm Bill. And if as part of the Sierra Club's Food and Ag Grassroots Network team, I have been fighting for on food and ag policy for a good 25, going into my 26th year. And I can't thank you and Carl enough for the platform you have provided for soil health and regenerative ag and regenerative grazing. And what a megaphone it's provided for megafauna to
I love it. Megaphone for megafauna.
yeah. That just came to me, but
You just made that up.
I
Perfect.
just did just on the
Perfect.
fly. I'm just that quick. But one of the things that when we talk about pastoral things and we talk about grazing, what we're trying to do is get back to the way that it used to be. And the way that it used to be has been pushed out by industrial agriculture, right? Factory farming, or what is known as CAFOs. And that's what I have really focused on, not only in promoting regenerative grazing, but most of my work has been on fighting the scourge that is the CAFO. Now, you have been focused a lot of your work on Africa, but you always talk about Iowa and its tall grass prairie. You dream of how it used to be in Iowa. Well, Seth, we plowed the prairie, and some people here are damn proud of it, and they shouldn't be. But what it has turned, we are the most physically altered of all states. We have 30 million acres of row crops, and we have 25 million hogs, which is no other state has more than 9 million. We're number one in eggs, we're number one in hogs, and we're top 5 in almost all forms of livestock. So what I tell people is that we're number one in number 2. And it is, we're swimming in hog crap and chicken shit here in Iowa. And I'm going to post a link to a story. We produce about 110 billion pounds of manure a year in Iowa. It is absolutely devastated the state of Iowa. We are now number 2 in cancer in the nation, and we're the only state where the cancer rates are increasing. And scientific links have been now, it's, oh, we need to study these things. Well, we have studied that, and it's coming from the nutrients that have run off from both the pesticides, herbicides, biocides, you name it, from the row crops and the manure, that 110 billion pounds of manure is being applied to the land, and it's overwhelming the land. It gets into the drainage tile, and then gets into the creeks or cricks, however you pronounce it, into the streams, the rivers, the lakes, and into our groundwater, which we drink, causing cancer. That's horrible, but it has given us an opportunity that we've never seen politically before in the state of Iowa, because now cancer has become a kitchen table issue. That kitchen table issue can now be put in politics along with jobs, the economy, education, healthcare. People are demanding that their politicians do something about the dirty water that's causing cancer, and what's causing that cancer is industrial agriculture. How big is the problem, and how can we address it? 95% of Americans eat meat, dairy, and eggs. And that's great. I'm a meat eater. I'm a meathead. I love protein, and I get my protein from meat, dairy, and eggs. But it's how we get it that's really important for American consumers. 99% of the meat, dairy, and eggs in this country comes from confinement agriculture. And we as consumers need to start changing that. We need to buy our meat, dairy, and eggs from farmers that are raising it the way that Soil4Climate and our regenerative grazers. We need to buy it from them. We need to buy it from the farmers who are doing it right. And they are not that hard to find. They have CSAs. They're selling their meat, dairy, and eggs online. They're selling them at the local co-op. You can find them. Even the grocery stores, the major grocery stores are selling organic milk and cheese and grass-fed and grass-finished meats. So people say, well, how do I do that? And I said, the easiest way is to know your farmer's first name. You can find local farmers all over the country to buy pasture-raised meats, dairy, and eggs. And that's my hope for 2026, is that we get more people to stop eating confinement-raised meat, dairy, and eggs, and get them to source it locally from a farmer that they know that's doing it right. So that's my hope. I know you do it that way, Seth. I know that I do it that way. And we need to get other people to vote with their dollars as a consumer, but then also to tell these stories to their elected officials at the state level and the federal level. And we changed the farm bill to not support the corn and soy that's feeding the CAFOs, and that they put some support behind regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture. So that's my soapbox, Seth. It's been a very strange 2025, and I'm glad that it's in the rearview mirror, and that I'm I'm rolling coal on it right now, and I'm looking for a very clean 2026 driving my EV to DC to work on the Farm Bill.
Well, Mike, thank you for all your work with the Sierra Club Food and Ag team and for pushing for changed legislation in the Farm Bill. Is there a specific piece of legislation or line item or something that you can
Yeah,
point to?
well, um, we're so far from the a new Farm Bill. You know, when they shut down the government this fall for a record amount of time, it also when they brought it back, they extended the 2018 Farm Bill till September 30th of this year, 2026. Now, the 2018 Farm Bill, you have to remember, 2018 was under the Trump administration, and that was a very bad farm bill that gave a lot of giveaways to large farmers, to the row croppers of corn and soybeans and cotton growers and rice growers. It was not good for the independent family farmer. And so there is going to be a lot of things we're going to be bringing forward that are going to be supporting that. And so there's nothing special right now, but if they, and specific that I can talk about, but in general, if people talk to their elected officials, we need a new farm bill that supports independent family farmers and doesn't support confinement agriculture or industrial agriculture. They can talk at that 10,000 foot level, and I think that uh, legislators are probably smart enough, or maybe I'm giving them too much credit to understand that. But you know, these are the farmers that supposedly were bailed out by Trump, but his pittance of money that he gave, um, you know, to them or is giving to them because of the China not buying soybeans and that sort of stuff. It's just ridiculous. It's not near enough. And then, you know, the importing of the Argentinian beef and all this, all the other problems. The farmers are really suffering right now in the Midwest and all over the country. They've been sold a bag of goods by Trump, and I think that they're waking up to the fact that they've been played, and they've been played over and over again. And I use the analogy of Charlie Brown and Lucy. Lucy holding the football and Charlie Brown going to kick the football, and Lucy keeps pulling the football away, and Charlie Brown tries to kick it and ends up landing on his keister. That's the American farmer, is Charlie Brown. And how many times is he going to try to kick the football and Trump and the GOP pull it away and they land on their ass? Okay. I think that they're finally waking up that the Trump and the GOP do not support the independent family farmer. The Farm Bureau does not support the independent family farmer. They are for agribusiness and large international agribusiness corporations. And so, what I suggest is people, if you're going to support farm groups, support your local, you know, not Farm Bureau, but Farmers Union chapter. There's Farmers Union chapters all over the country that support independent family farmers, and don't buy into the BS that we feed the world crap. We don't even feed our own communities, right? And growing corn and soy, what we're mostly doing is you're turning that into biofuels, or you're feeding the hogs and the cattle in the feedlots and the confinements. So it's but we definitely, the farm bill is where it's at, that we need to make large changes in our policy, but consumers can make individual choices by where they choose to spend their food dollar. Those are my two big takeaways and wishes for 26. Use your food dollars wisely and talk to your legislators about a better farm bill than we had in 2018, and one that supports those independent family farmers that produce a better type of protein.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Mike, you know, maybe we'll host a webinar specifically on the Farm Bill.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't you think about what are the key pieces of legislation that need to change with like specific action items, like this rep in this state, this rep in this state, and we'll
Well,
try,
yeah, well, that's real easy. Everybody has a senator, everybody or two senators, and everybody has their own legislature. But it's the Senate Ag Committee, like yourself. You have property in Vermont, and there's a senator from Vermont that's on the Senate Ag Committee. The junior senator from Vermont. His name is escaping me. It's not Bernie Sanders, the other senator from Vermont.
right, okay, we'll look it up.
Yeah, exactly. But he's on the Senate Ag Committee. And so those are the ones that you need to target is the ones on the Ag Committee, the ranking members. I mean, right now, the Democrats are not in power in DC, but I think the winds of change are blowing through DC. And I think that there is going to be this in November of 2026 will be a blue wave election. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly right now, that I think the Democrats could control both the House and the Senate. And then we would have a new farm bill in either the lame duck of this year, which would be after the election, but before the new Congress is sworn in. But most likely the next farm bill will be in early 2027 with a democratically controlled Senate and democratically controlled House. And they will reinstitute the SNAP benefits that were so rudely taken away by the GOP. $360 billion removed from SNAP, which was literally taking food from the mouth of poor babies. And it's just unfathomable and the cruelty of the GOP. And, the Farm Bill has always married food assistance with farm assistance. And that has been separated here by the GOP. And that's why we had the shutdown. One of them partially is and the Democrats didn't want to go back is because of SNAP. And that's the Farm Bill. And they promised to go back because then they also talked about maybe talking about and possibly voting on Obamacare. Extensions of the subsidies for Obamacare. Well, they talked about it, they voted on it, they voted it down, and now, as of today, millions and millions of Americans have their premiums increased on their health care. Thank the GOP for that. Vote them out of office. and then with that, we get a better farm bill. So I will let you go, Seth. I got things to do. It's a brand new year. Let's be optimistic. Let's kick some ass. Let's eat some grass-fed beef every day. Grass-fed, pasture-raised bacon, you name it. Bacon makes everything better. Love you, man.
Okay, love you too, Mike.
Take care.
Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. All right, well, it's been 2.5 hours now since I started this webinar. Well, I started it a little late, actually, so maybe more like 2 hours. But anyway, long enough for a webinar. You all get the point. Reflections on 2025 and hopes for 2026. Mike is hopeful that we're going to have a new farm bill, and Rebecca Tickell is hopeful about the release of the movie Groundswell, and I'm hopeful about the 2026 being the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, and I hope that people will stay in touch with Soil4Climate and help us on our campaign, which is trying to increase regenerative grazing and cropping in East Africa, particularly on Maasai lands in Kenya and Tanzania, but not just there. We also are supporting some programs in Malawi as well. And that really, I think, is where sort of the future is going to be determined, frankly, by what happens in East Africa. The Nairobi is growing. Nairobi is clearly going to be the New York of Africa. In my mind, There's no question about that. And then if you look at the trade routes from Nairobi into Asia and into Europe and the Middle East, I mean, it's just perfectly located. And, you know, the Europeans are wondering where they're going to get their beef, and where they're going to get it sustainably. And we got a lot of land that needs to be restored in East Africa. And the only way it's going to be restored is with holistic management and holistic raising of cows and sheep and even camels in the Sahel region. So at any rate, you know, ruminants, megafauna are essential to the restoration of sub-Sahara and Eastern Africa, and also essential to food security and climate change mitigation, all of it. It's all one topic. And I love the idea of focusing in Africa, because I kind of feel like the players in the States, you know, they have it figured out. But East Africa is really where there's still a lot of opportunity, still a lot of traditional pastoralist people there. And they can be elevated to make a change and be respected for their ancestral knowledge. They don't need to go back to ancestral knowledge. They're still in it. So I find that very inspiring. So I hope you'll continue to support Soil4Climate as we support that initiative. So that's my hopeful outlook for 2026. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you very much. I think I'm going to sign off now, and you know, we'll continue the good fight. Okay, everyone. Take care.